And welcome to day 2 of the School and Nursery Show here in Dubai. My name is Fiona Cottam and I'm the principal at Heartland International School, and I'm delighted to be with you for what is undoubtedly going to be another fantastic day at the show. Yesterday was a full house. We did 6 panel sessions, all of which were attended by thousands of people from their homes, and today I'm sure will be no exception. To start us off this morning, we've got a really important question, actually, that follows on from the school visits and discussions that many of you will have today. And the topic of this morning's first panel is school visits, assessments, and first experiences. What to look for and what to expect. I'm delighted today to be joined by 2 experts on the bench. First of all, to my left is Mr. Tim Richardson, who's the principal of Raffles International School, and beside him, Mr. David Hudson, who's the head of school at Dwight School here in Dubai. Well, good morning, gentlemen. Parents are really enjoying the experience, which is fantastic, of coming to a live event and a live show. But what happens next? So, they've made their inquiries, they're interested in our schools. What can they expect? Let's start with you, Tim. What can they expect when they come to Raffles?
Well, first of all, I think having a big central show like this, where parents have got a lot of opportunity to visit multiple different schools, is really valuable. But you can't replace the experience of actually visiting a school and seeing what the school's like, and particularly taking time, if you're allowed with the restrictions, to actually see classrooms in action, to see the relationship between students in the classrooms, and also, very importantly, the relationships that are evident between staff and students. A chance to ask some perhaps more individual questions of the admissions team or the academic representatives that parents will meet, and a chance really just to take some time and to really dig deep into what the school is doing, what it can offer, and make sure that it meets your needs as parents.
Yeah, interesting. David, your thoughts on that? Somebody who's coming to Dwight for a visit, what can they expect?
I'll agree with all that. I think it's very important that the first step after this is for parents to visit more than one school, because I think that for some parents, they will know the curriculum for their child. For others, it will be perhaps the school first and the quality of education, holistic education, and the curriculum may even come secondary to that. I think it's important to visit the school because you may have an idea of what the school is about, but 2 things. The first thing is every school has its own unique culture. So a parent has to be able to envisage and see their child in that school, not just within that grade or year group, but as they progress through the school. And of course, all schools are very welcoming, but there's nothing like seeing teaching and learning in action and how the students interact with each other, how the teachers and students interact with each other. So we would, at Dwight School Dubai, be wanting our parents and children, if they can visit the school and be part of that decision-making process, to actually come into the school, speak to the teachers, speak to children, come into the classrooms and really see what a school is like and Dwight School Dubai is like on a typical day-to-day basis. I think that's important.
Yeah, it's interesting that you've both, quite rightly, and I completely concur with you both, have picked up on the idea of that look and feel. It's how you feel when you come into a school, isn't it? It's what you see. It is in the classroom. And schools are human capital. They're all about people, and it's all about that interaction. So I've done my school tour, and I'm really grateful for my school tour. What might parents expect next? What might be the next steps, the next discussion points? Who would you expect them perhaps to ask some of those key questions to? Tim, happy to start with you again.
Yeah. Well, first of all, at Raffles, we would start with the admissions team, and parents would meet with the admissions team and just look at the technical aspects of admission. So what year group would the child be eligible for? A quick review of previous schooling, the curriculum that they've been involved. But I agree completely with David. I think that the curriculum is perhaps overstated a little bit. And frequently we will have parents coming in and say, well, my child's been studying in this particular curriculum, and we know that your UK national curriculum, how will they make that transition? And with the notable exception of examination syllabus, so GCSE and A-level syllabus, I think that's of secondary importance. And as David said, I completely agree with it, that it's of secondary importance, really. It's this culture of the school that's really important. So they meet with the admissions people, but I think it's also very important that they meet with somebody from the academic side as well, whether it's the head of school or deputy head, somebody who is in touch with what's going on in the classrooms, because there's a huge range of schools in Dubai, obviously, and many have got wonderful facilities. They're in great locations. But I think it's really important that when parents are meeting with the admissions team and representatives of the school, that they're looking from the perspective of their child. Is this the right school for their child? Not is this the biggest, the flashiest, with the most facilities, but is this a school, and having seen the school and having seen the children in it, is this the kind of school that my child is going to be happy in? And then most of us will do a short assessment with the child. For us, that is not an assessment to determine whether the child would be admitted to the school or not. It's to give us a good picture of where their particular strengths lie, where there may be challenges for that particular child, so that we can best place them within the school.
It's interesting you touched on the idea of curriculum, and curriculum perhaps being the thing not to worry so much about. We had a fantastic session yesterday talking about, which curriculum, and we actually have another session on that today. We've had over 7,500 hits and views on yesterday's discussion. So it still is something, obviously, that is a burning question for parents, but it's great to hear again for you to reinforce the same message from yesterday, is that, culture and the feel of the school is far more important than curriculum. So as we're having this discussion, just a reminder that please do send in your questions. The panel will be delighted to take your questions from home if you have any questions regarding this admissions process. David, your point of view, Dwight, is it very similar? We're probably all quite the same, but just in terms of those first steps.
Yeah, I think it's important that when a parent has visited the school, hopefully with their child or children, that obviously there's a follow-up to make sure that they've had all the questions answered. And of course, there's the admissions procedures and process with the admissions team. But I agree with Tim. I think it's important then that understanding that a family will visit more than one school, and they need a time to think and reflect and gather further questions. And of course, that might be when they come back with more specific questions for their child, things they've picked up in other schools that they want to see if that's actually what you do and what you offer, questions very particular to the curriculum. So that's when it's important that whether it be face-to-face or via Zoom or other media platforms, that parents and hopefully the child can step into a call or a visit and, of course, meet people from the academic team. And I think that's really, really important. We're very conscious and mindful of parents' time when they're making a difficult decision. So we hope that when they come in for a tour, they'll meet the people they need to meet to be able to ask those questions. But it's the follow-up that's really, really important, because I know as a parent myself, I'll often go somewhere and then come back with more questions than ever, and then want to know that I can actually speak to somebody who's going to be able to give me the answers before I make that important decision. But I think at some point we have to remember the child here. So it's very important that we have the opportunity to connect with the child before and during the application process. So I know that many parents are fantastic at bringing their child in for school tours, but that may not always be possible if their child's at school during the day. But we would definitely encourage them to perhaps jump on a call with us for 10 minutes so that they can ask questions that are important to them, and that we can tap into what we call their spark of genius or their own interests, and how we might actually cater for their learning needs should they decide to join our school.
Do you have an assessment process? I mean, what Tim described at Raffles is very similar to what we do at Heartland. Do you have an assessment process at Dwight?
Well, I think we pride ourselves on being an inclusive school. So much of the process is about finding out about the child, as opposed to whether they are it's going to be a yes or a no. But of course, we look at school reports and we will have conversations with parents and with the child, because quite often on paper, you lose something. So we really want to meet the child and speak with them and find out why they might be interested in joining the school, what they know about the school, and of course, answer any questions.
Do you have any form of assessment process at all, or is it just discussion?
So for the younger children, it might be play dates and coming in, seeing how they're interacting. And as they move up, it might be a piece of writing that they complete, just that we can have an idea of the level they're working at, and how we might support them when they join the school.
Again, I'm sure we're quite similar, but you can imagine if I'm a parent and this is the first child that I'm sending to school, and you say that there's an assessment process, naturally that brings a level of anxiety. But it's great to hear that, it isn't a pass and fail system, is it? It is about trying to find out about the child so we can best place them in the right class.
Yeah, it's best placement, and it's also, we want to hit the ground running. We want the teacher to welcome that child into the classroom and know really from day one what areas that child is particularly strong in, what areas the teacher needs to plan to develop. Because nowadays our teaching is very, very personalized, very, very individual, and it's really important that the teacher has that picture before the child even joins the classroom.
So what sort of time span from first visit to assessment to offer to what is the sort of time span that's normal, for example, for you, perhaps, Tim?
I think if the documentation is all ready, so if we've got previous school reports, we've got the necessary transfer certificates from the previous school, we have been able to offer places and get the admission process completed in a day.
Okay.
That's not typical because there's usually a few things that need to be arranged, and sometimes parents won't necessarily have everything that they need to start, but it's a very, very quick process.
And David, with you?
It is a short, efficient process, but it's also down to how long the parent wants to take the process. So it's not just about documentation, it's about further questions, further opportunities to meet people. So yes, it could in theory be done in a day, absolutely. But we're very happy to work with the parent to agree a timeline once they know that they're very interested in the school and they apply and it's their first choice school.
One of the things, Tim, that you mentioned, which is actually an interesting concern for parents, is just the sheer vastness of the city and the number of schools. The choices are just incredible. So, I mean, it's a great place to be as a parent in terms of being able to make choices for your child. How do I narrow it down, though? I've had parents who, I'm school number 22 that they visited, and the waters must get muddied at some point because we're very fortunate that we're in a city with great schools. How do you narrow down that choice? How do you move from today to tomorrow?
I think as the city has spread, there's no doubt that travel has become a key factor. So I would strongly recommend that parents look at the geography of the schools. Where do they live, and where are they planning on living? Have they got an idea that they're going to be here for a few years? Where are they going to be based? Because travel time is critical. We all know that peak times, school times, the roads are busy. Travel time takes a little bit longer. Schools in Dubai start very early in comparison to many other parts of the world anyway. And if your child has to get up 5 o'clock in the morning in order to be at school, they're not going to be in their peak learning state by 10 o'clock in the morning. They're going to want to go and have a lie down somewhere, quite frankly. So I think the geography is very, very important. Curriculum for older children, yes. Particularly if you've got a university location that parents have got in mind, or that the family have in mind, I think that plays a factor in it. And as we've all agreed, it's the look and feel of the school environment really that's very important. Clearly as well, if your child has got particular strengths, you need to make sure that the facilities are available in the school for those. So if your child has got a particular interest in drama and the performing arts, your first question really needs to be, is there a theatre, or is there a strong drama programme here? Likewise for sports and athletics. If your child has got a passion for athletics, you really need to find a school that's got a decent running track so that they can develop that passion and that enthusiasm.
And as much as we don't like to talk about it, we've sort of got to mention, fee structures, affordability, adding that into the mix. Any guidance that you might offer, for example, David, on that in terms of how parents narrow down those choices?
So I think it is obviously going to be down to what a family can afford and what they perceive as being value for money for that fee structure. I think that's important. We recognise that every single minute of every single day, we have to provide value for money. And what I mean by that is the highest quality education, because parents are spending a lot of money on their children's education, and they deserve, and the children deserve the very, very best. And that's why it is important that if a child wishes to excel in more than one area or one particular area, that the school meets those needs and has the facilities and the structure in place for that. I think in addition to that, I think parents want to know that the school has a solid reputation in the community. Is it linked to other schools internationally? Is it part of a network of schools, or is it a standalone school? What is the inspection outcome? What are the academic outcomes, results of that school, and whether they've been published? So whilst they may not be the number one driver in choosing a school, I think it is a package. And I think when we meet our parents, prospective parents, it isn't one single thing that they're looking for. They're looking for that broad range. But ultimately, I still go back to what Tim and I were saying. It's whether the parent can see their child in that school. Is my child going to be happy? Are they going to be safe? Yes, academic outcomes are extremely important, but are they going to have fun?
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. We want our children to enjoy coming to school every day.
Yeah.
And hopefully when they visit the school, they can envisage their child in that school. The child can see themselves in that school, and they really want to, come in and spend time with us.
The really reassuring thing from my point of view, having done a number of these panels now, is that, as educators, we're all on the same page. We're all saying the same thing. It is about the individual child. It is about that family, and if they feel it's the right fit for them. We're all in agreement that the assessment processes are not onerous assessments. They're nothing to be worried about. They're not pass or fail. And that personability and one-to-one is really important. But we've got a great question that's just come in. I'm not actually, promise you, I'm not checking my mail. I am checking the messages. But great question here. And it says, and think about this one, so I'll throw it to you, Tim, first, which is always unfair because that means you're first and you've got to think on your feet. But some schools don't have updated information on their websites. For example, their new fee structures, all of their facilities, activities specifically related to COVID times. From your personal perspective and in your opinion, what's the crucial information, A, that must be on websites, but B, that parents should really look for on the websites? And, that is a challenge, particularly in COVID times. We've had so much to do to update. Maybe some websites haven't been fully updated in relation to what we now do during COVID or do during normality. But what should a parent look for on the website? And if it's not on the website, where can they go to get that information?
First of all, I think that if the website is quite obviously not up to date, I think that can reflect on the school administration. I think we have an obligation to make sure that we present accurate and up-to-date information. One of the first things that we did at the beginning of this academic year, for example, was update all of the imagery on our website. So if you go to the Raffles International School website, you'll see children wearing face masks, observing social distancing in almost all of the illustrations, all of the photographs. And I think that's really, really important for parents to be able to see that, and to see that the school cares about the image that it portrays to the general public. Obviously, the fee structure needs to be there, and that needs to be up to date, because that's an essential piece of information. There must be curriculum information there as well. So what kind of subject options are available once we start making our subject choices, for example, end of year 9 going into year 10. Key aspects of what provision is there, what provision is there for learning support, what provision is there for language development. Most of us are working in international schools where a large percentage of the children don't necessarily have English as a first language. So what kind of support will be given to learners in that regard? And then if there are important questions that parents have that are not on the website, then the first port of call has got to be contacting the school's admissions team, because they may not necessarily be able to answer the question directly, but they will know who to refer the parent to or refer the question on, and get somebody from this school to contact those parents.
Okay, thank you. David, I know that Tim has gone through an exhaustive list,
yes.
and I can see your brain ticking away to think, right, what was it that he didn't mention?
I'm glad you think my brain's ticking away. That's good. I would agree with all of that. I mean, as a school, actually, we have a new website being launched in the next 2 to 3 weeks, but thankfully our school fees are up to date on there. I would agree with everything that Tim said. The only thing I would add is that when I look at school websites, I'm very interested in what the kind of philosophy of that school is. What are the sort of overarching aims or vision of that school, particularly if it's part of a group of schools. And then that is what would perhaps inspire me to want to actually visit the school. So I think there has to be some, whilst it's very important to have what I would call the nuts and bolts information of curriculum and fee structure, and if there's a inspection report that's easily accessible to parents that they can see what external visitors have said about the school, I'm looking for some sort of hook on the website that tells me a little bit about the ethos and culture and philosophy of the school. And then as a parent, I can explore that when I visit the school in person.
But I think, as you said, Tim, the best piece of advice is if you can't find it on the website, pick the phone up, drop an email. It might be an administrative error, and I'm certainly going to run off now very quickly and check my website, having listened to the two of you. Another great question in from a parent, and you know, again, particularly in COVID times, we know the restrictions that have been put in place in terms of parents and their ability to visit schools, but we know they still can do, as long as it's on a one-to-one basis. And KHDA have approved that, which has been beneficial for schools. But this parent has asked a question to say, I'm a working parent and I don't have childcare. Am I allowed to visit the schools at the moment, and when? When would you make your school available for somebody particularly who's a working parent? The hand is up. That gives Tim some thinking time.
I think to give Tim a break. I think the simple answer to that is, as a school, and I'm sure Tim's school is the same, we fit around the parent. So of course you want to have times of the week where you have tours, but we're very understanding that, I'm a working parent myself, and therefore it's very difficult, and parents find it difficult to get time off work, and they've got very busy lives. So we will work around the parents. So they contact the school. If they can visit the school during the day, great. Quite often what we'll have in that situation is the parent might come after school hours. Then if they really like the school, they will then somehow find a way of coming back for a second visit during the day, perhaps even with their child, if they can. But we understand that many of our applications, of course, come from overseas as well. And so it really is just making sure that we are available and to not waste their time. So who do they want to speak to? So it might be the admissions team, but it would also be somebody from the academic team as well, so that we can make sure that all those questions are answered if they can't visit the school. But we're certainly flexible on times for tours and visits.
Great. Tim, anything to add from Raffles' point of view?
I would echo what David's saying there. I mean, we at Raffles, on our website, we have a virtual tour anyway, so parents can actually go and click in different areas of the school, and it will take them around the school. But there aren't children there, and I think if parents have got time pressures and work commitments, then I agree completely. We can accommodate those with after school tours. But if the school is seriously on the shortlist for the parents, I really think it's important that they make the time to come and see the school when the children are in school and when teaching and learning is going on. We have an integrated nursery at Raffles as well, and they have very different rules at the moment. Nobody is allowed into the nursery during the time the children are on the premises. So unfortunately for those parents, they can only visit after the nursery has finished. But for the rest of the school, yes, we will accommodate tours during daytime. Parents can see into classrooms, but they can't actually enter the classroom at the moment for us. But they can still see what's going on. They can still see and hear the relationships and the way the classrooms are organised. It's really important.
Well, this is obviously a popular discussion this morning because we've got another question. So people are up bright and early on a Saturday morning, testing you gentlemen. Here we go again. So great question here. How important is the KHDA rating? I can see that most schools with a rating above good are not quite as affordable, perhaps, as some others. Some people say that it's about the facilities and not just about the academic level. I mean, the question is, how true is that? Now, there's a lot of different elements to that. We've got how important is the rating, first of all, and then it's the fact that many schools that are rated good or above are perhaps more premium, perhaps in the international setting, and they're not new schools, so they're schools that have perhaps been around for some time, so they have that judgment. It's a difficult question for us as principals, isn't it, how important the rating is? I mean, let me start, I guess, Tim. Raffles is a very well established and well thought of school. Dwight, a new school on the market. What are your thoughts about the KHDA ratings and inspection outcomes?
I do think they're important. Of course, it's not just KHDA. We're as a UK national curriculum school, we are also BSO accredited and have BSO inspections as well. So there's a range of different inspection platforms. Other schools might have got accreditation from the US or elsewhere in the world. Those external visits I think are important. It's an external validation of what you are doing. I would challenge the idea that only expensive schools have got very good ratings. That's not necessarily true. There are some quite affordable schools that have got very good and outstanding ratings. And I don't feel that within the inspection framework, there is not a judgment that is solely linked to the facilities. I think that there's the inspectors look at the way the school is maintained. They look at health and safety within the school, but you are not going to get an outstanding rating because you have a multi-purpose hall or a huge sports facility or anything like that. The school must be fit for purpose, and it must be able to provide a high quality of education in order to get a high rating. But I don't see that there's a connection between having expensive equipment and higher inspection ratings.
Yeah, no, agreed on all counts. It's about management of facilities, isn't it? It's not actually about what you have. And you're absolutely right. There are many, many affordable schools who are brilliant schools across this city. Perhaps it's marketed in a slightly different way, but it's a valid question from the parent in terms of, from their perception, from the research that they've done, many of the good schools and above are less affordable, and probably percentage-wise that may well be the case. Same question, really, your thoughts and reflections, new school onto, the landscape here in Dubai.
So absolutely, I agree. I think the parent's opinion, perception is very, very important. So a parent might be, or a family might be looking at a particular group of schools, and of course they may be within a certain fee structure. But I would agree there are some very good and outstanding schools that have a lesser fee structure, shall we say. I think for me, inspection is important, but I think each parent, each family that I speak to, they sort of have different levels of importance with that. Some of them, it will be the number one thing because it's external validation, somebody looking into the school that's not within the school. So where there's no kind of bias, it's against criteria. So I think we welcome inspection as a school. And I think it's important that schools develop systems and processes where they're not always thinking and leaning towards inspection. They're actually focusing on the education of the child, but are always very mindful of the importance of that inspection. And I think that, we should never ignore the fact that, we need to have some sort of external validation. It is important. Some schools may value other accreditation more highly, but I think it's important that parents get to see that there are other people looking at the school to see whether it's value for money, whether the management of resources is at the level it should be, whether the curriculum and teaching is at the right standard, and whether the children are having a fantastic holistic education.
But I think we're probably all agreed. I mean, I went through my first KHDA inspection in 2009, and the process has changed and evolved as the city has changed and evolved. And the rigor of the system in terms of, as you say, that validation of the great work that all of our schools are doing, it is an important, aspect for parents to look at. But I think we're all agreed it's not the only aspect, and it's not the be all and the end all. It is just one facet of what parents might look at if looking for a school.
Of course, since the inspection process first started, that has evolved, and it has become much more developmental. I can remember, you, Fiona, when the first round of inspections came, it was very much a judgment, and this is what we're going to tell you at your school. Now the inspection gives us some very helpful developmental feedback. And just thinking about the context of this conversation, perhaps a question for parents who have hopefully read the inspection, the most recent inspection report on the school's website, where it says these are areas in which the school needs to develop. A good question for parents to ask the academic, the head of school or the academic team at the school is, what have you done since the last inspection? Because for some of us, our last inspection was quite a while ago. So what have you done about that? You know, the inspectors for us, our last one was in 2018, November 2018.
Gosh,
so
okay.
a good question is, you know, what have you done about it in the interim period?
And do you know what, that's a great thought to actually leave parents with. Do your research, do your work, do your scrutiny, absolutely look at the inspection outcomes, but more importantly is, how has the school even moved on since that time? And have those types of discussions with the academic teams, with the registration team, the admissions team, and indeed with parents and with children as hopefully they walk around our schools. I'm conscious of time. We have had the most engaging conversation this morning, and one that's obviously been popular with the listeners in terms of the questions that they've asked. I'm really grateful to both of you, to Tim and to David, who've joined us this morning. On behalf of the School and Nursery Show, it's been a super first talk of the day. Thank you so much for joining us. And remember, the doors are open. We're all here to have those conversations with you. And you can catch up on all of our discussions over the course of the next coming weeks through our live recordings. But on behalf of the show, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks. Thanks, Fiona.